Hey guys, I'm Ragnarok. Today I'm giving you a guide of Demonology Warlock for patch 8.0. This is the pre-patch at level 110, and I'm going to show you a few different builds. I'm going to show you the simplest build to use if you're doing something, like you say you're new to Demonology, never played it before, and you don't want anything too complex. I can show you the simplest build. It's way easier than it was in Legion, and I can show you a more complex build as well for those who want to min-max their damage, and I'll show you some PvP stuff after that shortly. So I'm going to go over a few things. I'm going to go over the spells first, then I'm going to go over the talents, then rotations, and then I'll get into the PvP stuff after that. First thing I'm going to cover is the pets. So we have the Imp, the Voidwalker, the Fell Hunter, the Succubus, and the Felguard. 90% of the time you will use the Felguard as your main pet because there are two talents that use the Felguard and will not work without the Felguard. And also he does the most damage on AoE cleave because he can do a Blade Storm, or a Fell Storm, sorry. And basically just rolls around, hits all the targets around him. The Succubus is good for PvP environments. There are some honor talents that make your Shadow Bolt faster with her out as well, and she has a slow, and she also has a Seduce ability which basically CCs a target automatically if someone CCs you, which is handy. Fell Hunter is a silence. He's also great for DPS single target. Not bad if you just want to have a silence, and doing single target DPS, definitely a viable choice now. Voidwalker is great for questing. He does like a leech soul well sort of thing. And then you've got your standard imp as well. He has a D-spell, he's got a little hot he can cast on you, and he gives you a stamina buff of 5%. Alrighty, into the spellbook. I'm just going to give you a general idea of what each spell does. So the first one we've got in the book is Banish. So basically you can CC a demon, aberration, or elemental for 30 seconds. So this is obviously PvE. You can use it for PvP as well. You can banish enemy warlocks, demons. You can banish the Shadow Priest aberrations. You can banish elementals like the earth elemental and the fire elemental and the water elemental. So great for PvP environments, great for raids as well, like Agrima for example, where all the little elementals come out in a circle. CCing one of them, it's actually one of the best CCs in the game for that fight. And the next we've got called Dreadstalkers. This is one of your main abilities. This one sends out two Dreadstalkers that charge at the target, and this you want to use off cooldown. So they come out like that. They do their Dreadbite as their first ability, and then they just auto-attack until they fade away. Now, when they fade away, something quite lovely happens. You get this thing called a Demonic Core, and there they are there. You get two for each Dreadstalker, and this is a 100% chance of getting these from every Dreadstalker you have out. So this reduces the cast time of Demon Bolt by 100%. Demon Bolt is another one of your main abilities. It does a lot of damage, Shadow Flame damage, and generates 2 soul shards. So it's a great way to get your soul shards back up, which you will need to summon more demons like Core Dreadstalkers and Hand of Gul'dan, which summon imps, but I'll go over those a bit more in depth a bit later. So as far as the spellbook goes, Command Demon. Basically, when you have your demon out, this ability becomes one of their main demonic abilities that you get from the demon. So basically, you can see in the little tooltip there, the Felguard you get the Axe Toss, which is a stun. The Fell Hunter you get Spell Lock, which is your interrupt. Voidwalker you get Shadow Bulwark, which it's kind of useless. All that does is gives a Voidwalker more health. Succubus you get Seduction, Imp, Singe Magic. Singe Magic is the Dispel, and Seduction is that CC I mentioned before. So we've got Create Healthstone and Create Soulwell. So these are pretty much the same spell. The only difference is Create Soulwell will actually put a Soulwell on the ground, and then everyone in your party can click it to get a Healthstone. I just use a Soulwell most of the time. I wouldn't even bother putting Create Healthstone on your bard, to be honest with you. And that way, you know that the party will always have access to your Healthstone. Demon Bolt. Demon Bolt's the spell I mentioned before. You can hard cast it. It's a long cast, 3.2 seconds. It's Shadow Flame damage, does a fair amount, generates 2 soul shards, pretty simple. I tend to only use it when I am getting Demonic Core procs, which I demonstrated before. But you can hard cast this in certain scenarios, like just before a boss pull, or if you want to generate shards off a immune target, like a mage in Ice Block, for example, that will still work and give you shards, whereas Shadow Bolt will not. Demonic Gateway, it's a little bit different to what it used to be. Basically, it's your teleport, so you can put it out like this. It's quite a quick cast. It sets up way faster than before, which is nice, and you can use it. But what a lot of people don't know that's really different from any other point in the game where Demonic Gateway was a thing is now you can actually put it across multi-levels. So we can put it down there, and if we're on the ground, we can even put it all the way up the top there as soon as it comes off cooldown here. Boom. And look at that. So that's the huge advantage of the new Demon Gate, guys. It's not that annoying one where you can't put it across things because there's no path available. They fixed that up and now you can use it to your heart's desire. Alright, next we've got Drain Life. So Drain Life is a 3.5 second channel. It does 820 shadow damage over 3.5 seconds and you get healed for 500% of the damage done. So it's got an animation update as well, looks quite cool. Green on your end, purple on the demon's end, and the target sort of flashes like a purpley colour as well, and it crits quite frequently, which is nice. And I reckon it's definitely one of the stronger Drain Lives out of the other specs. Affliction, it's about the same, but for some reason Destruction, it's a really weak heal. I'm not sure why, but Enslaved Demon is also quite handy. It's sort of a spell that a lot of people forget about. This basically allows you to enslave a demon and they become your pet for 5 minutes. However, if you enter an instance or use your Hearthstone or anything, then it just disappears. And after 5 minutes, he'll start attacking you and you can just either enslave him again or just kill him. Otherwise, he'll just return to his spawn place if he's too far away. Eye of Kilrog, basically, you summon an eye and you turn into this eye, and you can have a look around and look at your character. Pretty gimmicky. Alright, Fear. So Fear is like your main CC. You can usually cast it about 3 times until the DR completely wears off. If you cast it 3 times back to back, you can only have a limit of 1 Fear at a time. So if you fear one target and then fear another target next to it, it will cancel the other fear. So just be aware of that. Alright. So Hand of Gul'dan, another one of your main abilities. So this calls down Meteor. Basically, the more shards you have, the more imps will come out. So if you've just got 1 soul shard, only 1 imp will come out. If you got 3, 3 will come out. If you got more than 3, it'll only use a maximum of 3. It won't use more than 3 anymore. It does Shadow Flame damage. It's an AoE. You can get Azurite traits that makes this a dot as well, which is really handy if you like to AoE. And basically, yeah, this is your spell to use whenever you have nothing else to spend your shards on. So always prioritize Call Dreadstalkers over this one. And basically, yeah, that's basically your filler shards spender, and that's how you get a lot of imps out really quick. Hell Funnel, this basically is like a drain that heals your pet over time. Implosion, this is basically a baseline AoE now. What it does is it gets all your demons out and you can implode them. I'll just demonstrate real quick. So we'll Hand of Gul'dan, notice it spent some shards, now we've got 3 imps. Now if we hit Implosion, it sends them all in and they explode. And that's an AoE as well. So that's basically how you use Implosion. How to use it well is a completely different thing, which I'll show you later in the rotation part of this guide. But basically what you want to do is kind of not hold off using it too much, because the less energy the imps have, the less implosion damage you'll get out of them. So if you use them straight off the bat, that's when you'll get the largest implosion. So it's a bit micromanagey, but when I go into it, it'll make a bit more sense. These 2 are talents, I'll cover those shortly later. The Ritual of Summoning, this is what you do to summon people. You just need 2 other people to help you summon it out. Shadow Bolt is basically your filler spell. So this is what generates your soul shards when you don't have Molten Core procs, basically. I do something a little bit tricky. What I do is, say I've got my Felguard as my main pet, right? His auto attack is Legion Strike, that's like his basic ability, but when you're attacking, his energy here never really drops below 50%. So what I've done, I've made a sneaky little macro here. for Shadow Bolt, and it's just cast Shadow Bolt and cast Legion Strike at the same time. So when I cast Shadow Bolt, he's gonna auto attack and start attacking with his Legion Strike as soon as he stops doing his Blade Dance. And the reason why this is good is because that way his energy he'll use it all up every time you're hitting Shadow Bolt. So you can see his energy just down there. And the other reason why this is good is when you have your Demonic Tyrant out, you're going to be spamming the Shadow Bolt a lot to try and get those soul shards out as fast as you can. So this will make him hit harder with the Tyrant out as it buffs his damage by 15%. You don't want him auto attacking, you want him using all that energy he has Legion striking. So I recommend you guys do that if you want to really min-max your damage. It's minimal damage, like leaving a passive is fine if you don't want to go into that much depth, but he does gain a little bit extra. We're talking really small, like 3-4% extra, but it turns to be 10 to 20% extra when your Tyrant's out, which is quite a big deal. Next spell we have Shadow Fury. Stuns all enemies within 8 yards, so this is now a baseline stun on a 1 minute cooldown. So it's an AoE just like this, and you cast it, and then boom, they all get stunned. And you can get a talent that reduces the cooldown to about 45 seconds, and that way you can use it a bit more often if you'd like to use that playstyle. Soulstone, we've got our Battle Res, so this Battle Res isn't quite as good as Rebirth, which now heals for 100% of the health. This reses them to about 60% of health and gives them 20% mana. So whenever someone needs a battle res, just remember you have a soulstone that you can battle res. But what makes this battle res unique is you can pre-cast it on someone. So a lot of warlocks like to cast it on themselves and keep the buff up all the time, so if they're out in the world questing and they die, instead of running all the way back to their body, they can just self-res themselves if they've got this soulstone stored on them before they die. I've already explained the demons. Alright, Demonic Tyrant. So this is basically your big cooldown. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, so that's 1 minute and 30 seconds. And what this guy does is he comes out and all your demons' duration is increased by 15 seconds. So your imps have like a timer, right? And so do your Dreadstalkers. They disappear after 12 seconds. Your imps, they disappear as soon as they deplete all their energy. Whereas when the Tyrant comes out, they freeze the energy of the imps so they can just continue to cast at full energy, and they won't disappear until the Tyrant disappears. Same with the Dreadstalkers, same with the Grimoire Guard, and any other demon you have out. I think the only thing it doesn't buff is the inner demons, the bonus demons you get out of them. Like I'm not talking about the imps, I'm talking about the 10% chance to summon those random demons. It won't buff those guys, so just be aware of that. But he does still do the 15% damage buff for every single demon you have out. So even if you summon demons after he's out, it won't give him the 15-second buff timer, but he will buff that damage by 15%. And I'll demonstrate this, how to use it effectively in the rotation part of this guide. So Unending Breath, this just allows you to breathe underwater and swim 20% faster for 10 minutes. Alright, last but not least we have Unending Resolve. This is your defensive cooldown. It's 3 minutes, but it's a very effective cooldown, especially in PvP, because it's 40% damage reduction, which is quite huge, and it grants you immunity to interrupt and silence effects for 8 seconds. So if you're really desperate to get a cast off, you pop this, it will give you a huge defensive, so you're likely to survive a little bit longer, and then you can get that cast out without people interrupting you. You still are vulnerable to stuns and things like that and pushbacks, so just be aware of that. But what I like to do with Unending Resolve is I like to macro that with my Healthstone. So Unending Resolve / use Healthstone. Yeah, just ignore these other things. This is for if you're stone form, if you're a dwarf. Stacks well with that as well. And if you like to use PvP battleground potions, you can macro them as well with it. And I just keep them all in there just so it's easy to remember how to use it. And now on to the passive ability. So the Demonic Core is probably one of the most important passive abilities. So when your imps expend all their energy or they're imploded, you have a 10% chance to absorb their life essence, granting you a stack of Demonic Core. So when your summoned Dreadstalkers fade away, they give you a 100% chance to absorb their life fences, granting you a Demonic Core. And Demonic Core reduces the cast time of Demon Bolt by 100%, and then you get a maximum of 4 stacks. So make sure you spend these as soon as you possibly can, and that way you won't cap out at 4 stacks. Capping out 4 stacks is great, but if you get more procs, you won't benefit from them if you're already capped at 4 stacks, so just be aware of that. And you only want to cast Demon Bolt if you're missing 2 or more soul shards, so you get the full benefit of the soul shard generation out of it. If you've got 4 or more soul shards, hold off casting Demon Bolts. Spend those shards first with a Hand of Gul'dan or Dreadstalkers or whatever you can, and then Demon Bolt to build them back up quickly and summon even more demons. The next thing we're going to go into is the Mastery. So Mastery is just the baseline damage done by your demons. So the more Mastery you have, the more raw damage your demons will do. The only thing this doesn't buff though is Implosion itself, because it doesn't count as a demon's ability. That's to do with your personal ability. So Mastery doesn't buff this. What does buff this is Intellect, Crit. The crit chance is a big deal here. Haste, because obviously the more haste, the more imps you can get out. And Versatility. Versatility is just, again, raw damage of you personally. So more versatility will buff your Implosion, which is handy to have in whenever you need to use Implosion. Soul Leech. So this is another big ability. This is what makes Demonology Warlocks as tanky as they are. So all your single target damage generated by you and your minions grants you and your pet shadowy shields that absorb 8% of the damage dealt, up to 15% of maximum health. So this isn't just you and your pet, this is all your minions. So the more imps and demons and everything you have out, the more soul leech you're going to get out of it. And that's why you see Demonology Warlocks, they're quite squishy at the start, but if you let them get an army of demons out, all of a sudden they become really hard to kill because they're just getting so much soul leech out of this. And Soul Link is another thing. So Soul Link is, it kind of like has a nice synergy with Soul Leech, but 20% of all of the damage you take is taken by your pet instead. So keeping your pet with higher health is a good idea, only because it'll mean the more damage he can take, the more you can take as well. And the Soul Leech also heals you for 25% of that, you and your pet for 50% of the absorption it grants. So it's getting a little bit complex with the numbers there. So basically it means you've got a passive heal every second just from your pets being out. If you don't have any pets out, you're not going to get Soul Link at all. You're not going to get the healing, you're not going to get the Soul Leech, nothing. So make sure you've always got a pet out. Next thing is Soul Shards. So Soul Shards are generated by your Shadow Bolt and your Demon Bolt. Shadow Bolt generates 1, Demon Bolt generates 2. Soul Shards are consumed to cast your most powerful spells and summon demons to serve you. While you're out of combat, by default you'll generate up to 3 Soul Shards, as you can see here. You can also lift this, but that's irrelevant. And then this is just the green fire thing, which, yeah, just ignore that as well. If you've got green fire, that's great, but it doesn't work with Demonology Warlock since Miss Pandaria and Warlords of Traynor, unfortunately. Alright, so that's all the spells done. Now on to the talents. Alrighty, so the talents, this is what differentiates the complex gameplay and the simple gameplay, the good gameplay and the bad gameplay, and the PvP and the PvE. There are just so many different builds that you can use for Demonology, and that's one of the things I love about this spec. Now, one problem with Demonology is it's quite low in numbers right now, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't play it, and that doesn't mean it's unviable. It's still a very strong spec if you know how to use it properly. So I'm going to go first through the simplest of the simple specs, the passive talents. So the passive talents are mainly the left-hand sided talents. Just ignore the Grimoire Felguard here. I've just got a legendary on that gives me 2 talents here. But say you picked all the left side. Passive, 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 and passive. Easy, right? 0 difference to your rotation. You don't have to think of extra spells and cooldowns. You can play the way you normally want to if you want the simplest rotation possible. So what Dreadlush does is it makes your Dreadstalkers charge into battle with their Dreadbite attack, which is what they do anyway, but it turns it into an AoE. It hits all targets within 8 yards and it deals 25% more damage. So even on single target, you're still getting 25% more damage out of their Dreadbite. And it synergizes well with this because Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt have a 20% chance to make your next core Dreadstalkers cost 1 less shard and have no cast time. So it's similar to that the Shoulder Legendary that we have in Legion. And basically that just allows the smoothness of the Dreadstalkers to come out better. Having the instant cast is a really nice thing to have, especially if you're in a fight with a lot of movement. Demon Skin, I choose this talent by default most of the time because it buffs your Soul Leech and your passive healing. And it absorbs up to 15% of maximum health. It's just really handy. It stacks so well with Demonology. Even for the other 2 specs, it's not too bad. But if you don't like that, if you're happy with the default Leech and you prefer Burning Rush for the sprint because Warlocks are very slow, go Burning Rush. And Dark Pact, it's a little bit different. It sacrifices your own health instead of your demon's health. So obviously this is well optimized the more health you have. So if you use it at low health, it's not going to be a very big bubble. But this right here, it's really personal preference, guys. Tier 60, we've got From the Shadows. So casting Core Dreadstalkers causes the target take 20% additional Shadow Flame damage from you for the next 12 seconds. So just be aware, guys, that Dreadlash, even though it's an AoE, it won't spread this to other targets, unfortunately. This will only go on the one target that you're targeting when you summon your Dreadstalkers. And this debuff will last for the duration of the Dreadstalkers, which is 12 seconds. So Shadow Flame damage is 3 spells: Hand of Gul'dan, Implosion, and Demon Bolt. So even if you don't use Implosion, doesn't matter. Demon Bolt and Hand of Gul'dan, you'll be casting that plenty of times to take advantage of this anyway. We've got Dark Fury. This basically just reduces the cooldown of Shadow Fury by 15 seconds, which is what I mentioned before. So see, now it's only 45-second cooldown. So if you like to use this stun more often, take this talent. Soul Conduit. This is a nice talent. Every soul shard you spend has a 15% chance to be refunded. It's a little bit RNG-ish, but when it does give you those refunds, it's really nice because sometimes they refund you more than 1 shard. Sometimes you get 2 or even 3, and then yeah, obviously the more refunds you get, the more demons you can get out quickly, and to the point where it's better than Inner Demons and Grimoire Felguard. So I reckon these 2 talents will be the strongest here. Sacrifice Souls. I just use this anyway just because it's nice and simple. Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt deal 5% additional damage per demon you have summoned. So obviously if you're going to have a lot of demons, your Shadow Bolt and your Demon Bolt being spells you use quite frequently, it's nice to have those do even more damage. And having your Demon Bolt buffed with From the Shadows, buffing it as well, it's going to hit really hard when you've got all these things going at once. Alright, so that's the simple build for the simple rotation. So I'm just going to show you guys what the rotation is for that. So I'm just going to show you on a little pack of imps here, just to show you the Dreadlash cleave that you get out of it, and the cleave you get from Hand of Gul'dan as well. Because a question I get asked a lot is, you know, how do you AoE with Demonology? And people say, oh yeah, just use Implosion, but you can do it without using Implosion. I know Implosion's not the ideal spell all the time. Alright, so for your opener, I always start with Core Dreadstalkers. Now I've got another talent makes them instant cast, so let me just get rid of that. Alright, so now we've got Core Dreadstalkers, and then basically straight into the Shadow Bolt, 3 shards, Hand of Gul'dan, 3 shards, Hand of Gul'dan, 3 shards, Hand of Gul'dan, 3 shards. And now we're starting to get the procs. As soon as you get procs, spend them straight away as long as you've got 3 shards or less. And as soon as you get that second pack of Stalkers out, you want to summon your Tyrant. And then just basically keep doing the same rotation. 3 shards, imps, 3 shards, imps. And when Molten Core procs, make sure you use it. When your Dreadstalkers come off cooldown, make sure you use them straight away. And yeah, and basically rinse and repeat, guys. It's as simple as that. And as you can see, we're getting some good splash damage with the imps surrounding it. And that's pretty much it, guys. And see my things off cooldown again. You kind of want to use this guy off cooldown, just like your Dreadstalkers. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to watch his buff. So he expires in a few seconds. So I'm going to get some imps out. And right before he despawns, I'm going to implode them all. And that way, that's probably the best time to use Implosion there. The other time you can use Implosion, which I might as well show you while we're on the topic of Implosion, is basically what you do is you Hand of Gul'dan and then implode instantly after. So Hand of Gul'dan, implode. And then the imps from that first Hand of Gul'dan will still be there. Hand of Gul'dan, implode. Hand of Gul'dan, implode. And that's why you're sort of maximizing the imp's energy. It's quite a boring rotation. It's nowhere near as fun as imploding like heaps and heaps of them like you can with the Tyrant. But that's basically another way around it, especially if you've got Azurite traits that give you buffs from using Implosion with 3 or more imps. Which I think there's a haste buff it gives you, which will allow you to just continuously do this at a faster rate, which will buff your AoE heaps. Anyway, so that's the basic rotation. Now I'm going to go into the more advanced part of the guide, where we start choosing some of these other talents, more buttons to press, more things to watch, but also more damage if done correctly. Alright, first thing I'm going to show you before I get into the talent side of things, I'm just going to show you the 2 legendaries that I think are really good to use here. The first one is Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. So each Dreadstalker or Wild Imp you summon reduces the cooldown of your Tyrant by 2 seconds. So that's how I get him back out so quickly. The other one I use is Soul of the Neverlord. This is the one that gives me that additional talent. Gives you Soul Conduit by default, and then it gives you options of Inner Demons or Grim or Felguard on top of that, which is really strong. Other legendaries are still quite good. Surfuse is a good one if you like to CC a lot to get that like mini Lust-like ability. So haste, more demons. So that's also a strong talent to use. If you don't have these legendaries, you can farm world quests and buy them from the legendary vendor in Dalaran. You can actually choose which legendary you got with Awakening Existence now. So if you're new to Demonology and don't have legendaries, go farm those. You can get at least one of these within a day, and the second one within a few days after that if you keep farming religiously for it. The next build I'm going to show you is a build that I normally play with. So we're going to go Demonic Strength. What this does is it infuses your Felguard with a strength that allows his Felstorm to do 400% increased damage. Now just remember that this Felstorm is completely different to this Felstorm. You can still use both at the same time. Only difference is this is on the Felguard's global cooldown, and this is on your global cooldown of your personal abilities, and this won't use any of the Felguard's energy, whereas this one will use 60 energy of his. So basically, I'm going to choose this talent now, and the best time to use this talent is when you summon your Tyrant out. So I'll show you that shortly in the rotation, how I get about a Tyrant out, I use this, I get another Tyrant out, and this is still on cooldown because of the legendary I'm wearing. But every second Tyrant I get out, I basically make sure I've got Demonic Strength ready to go and use it, and that way it does so much damage. 400% increased damage, plus the 15% buff you get from the Tyrant, it just does massive AoE. I've seen it just clear mobs really quickly in Mythic Dungeons. The next one we're going is Power Siphon. Power Siphon sacrifices 2 Wild Imps to give you 2 charges of Demonic Core. So if you're out of shards and you don't want to bother hard casting that Shadow Bolt and you've got a few extra imps up, you can sacrifice 2 of them. And it's not as bad as you think. You sacrifice 2 imps and you can usually get 4 to 6 out of that sacrifice because of it, and you get Demon Bolts which do a lot of damage anyway. So this is the talent I like to use with only a 30-second cooldown. You don't always have to use it straight off cooldown, it's more of a situational thing. I only use it if you've got no shards and no Demonic Core procs. If you're lucky enough to get endless Demo Core procs, then you might not even have to use this, and if you've got the stats that allow you to get that many procs all the time, then you may not even want this talent. You might prefer Demonic Calling or Doom, which is pretty weak at the moment. I wouldn't even choose Doom if I were you. But it is a good talent. I do enjoy the playstyle of it. Next tier, well, we've gone over this before, tier 60, I'm going to choose Soul Strike. Now, the cool thing about Soul Strike is, one, it does a lot of damage from your Felguard, two, it's like a charge for your Felguard, see, 50-yard range, and three, it gives you a Soul Shard, and it's only on a 10-second cooldown. The hardest part about using this ability is remembering to using it off cooldown, so my advice is to download the add-on Tell Me When, or Weak Auras, whichever one you prefer, and set up a little icon on your screen, just like I've done here. As you can see, I've done it for a few spells. Basically, Tell Me When, you just right click on it, you hit spell cooldown, you type in Soul Strike, the name of the spell, and pick obviously the Felguard one there, and then we hit group, make sure only to show in combat, otherwise it's just be in your face all the time, hit OK, and then exit. Simple as that, pretty easy to use. Tell Me When, I do enjoy it, and that way whenever it's off cooldown it'll pop up here as an icon, and then it'll be a lot easier for me to see and remember when it's off cooldown, so it's ready to go as soon as I need that extra soul shard. I try to use this off cooldown as quickly as I can to take advantage of the good shadow damage it does. Alrighty, so the next tier, this is really personal preference, guys. It's up to you. I personally choose Mortar Coil, only because it's an extra CC, 3 seconds, you can damage them and it won't break the CC, and it gives you a 20% heal, so it's like a defensive in a way as well. 20-yard range, which isn't huge, but 45-second cooldown's not too bad, so it's always ready to go whenever the healer can't quite keep you up and you've already used your health stone but you need a little bit more healing. This will give you a free 20% HP. Great in PvP as well, might I add. Alright, so for tier 90, this is where we've got our legendary ring involved. But if I didn't have it, I'd probably choose Soul Conduit by default or Inner Demons. They're both pretty similar. Personally, I'd probably choose Soul Conduit just because I do like the extra shards. I reckon I can get more demons out of this talent than I can out of the others. But we're going to choose Inner Demons here, only because Grimoire Felguard has been nerfed so much to the point where it's come unviable. It's still okay in PvP, and it's alright for an opening burst, but beyond that, it's crap. It's got poor consistency now that it's a 2-minute cooldown now. It used to be a minute and a half. And it only does 25% increased damage. It used to do 100% increased damage, and it also used to last 25 seconds. Now it only lasts 15 seconds. So it's one of the most nerfed things that happened to Demonology in BFA. So avoid this talent if you're doing PvE. I'd definitely stick to the other two. They're perfectly fine to use. For tier 100, this again is sort of personal preference to your playstyle. So for Sacrifice Souls, it's still what I'm going to go with for PvE, just because I like having all the imps to stay out, and I like to use them on Implosion whenever there's more than one target. So in a case like this, where you've got more than one target, after your Tyrant expires, use that Implosion. You'll get a lot more damage out of it than if you just let your imps expire from the Shadow Bolt. If it's single target though, keep the imps just firing the Shadow Bolts, Fire Bolts, sorry, and the single target will be better if you let the imps do that rather than imploding. Demonic Consumption is probably the best one for single target in saying that, because what it does is if you have lots of imps out and you summon this tyrant, he sacrifices the imps, absorbs all their power, and he hits like a truck. Only downside is it's single target. So on Cleave, this is the worst talent you could possibly pick. The last one is Netherportal. Now this one is a funny rotation. This is the only time where you don't want to build 3 soul shards up before Hand of Gul'dan. You want 1 soul shard, Hand of Gul'dan, 1 soul shard, Hand of Gul'dan, 1 soul shard, just because each time you spend a soul shard, it summons a demon for you. If you spend 3 soul shards, you still only get the 1 demon. So that's what a lot of people get confused about with Netherportal. The other thing is it's got a huge cooldown of 3 minutes, it's got a big cast time, 1.8 seconds, and it costs 3 soul shards. So this is a very situational talent. Like, feel free to use it, don't get me wrong, it's a great opener, but after that initial burst damage, your damage just drops right down compared to the other two. So that's more an advanced talent. I can show you that now if you'd like, just to give you an idea of how it works. Alright, so what I would do before I use it, I'd get 5 shards. right? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start off with our Soul Strike, and we're gonna probably follow it by a Shadow Bolt, and once we have 5, we're gonna summon the Netherportal, and then follow it up with the Dreadstalkers, and then the rotation, it's literally gonna be Shadow Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan, Shadow Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan, this off cooldown, Hand of Gul'dan. That's literally gonna be the rotation. And then once we've got all these demons out from this portal, we're going to summon our Demonic Tyrant to keep them all up and running for another 15 seconds and do extra damage. This is basically how we're going to do it. However, if after about 30-40 seconds, all of that's going to be all over, and then our damage is going to drop right off, which is why this is only good for short fights. I wouldn't use it on a long fight. But here's how it's going to go. So let's start off with our Soul Strike to get our Felguard right in there. And we're going to Shadow Bolt, we're going to summon our Portal, and now we're going to summon our Dreadstalkers, and now a Shadow Bolt, a Hand of Gul'dan, Soul Strike, Hand of Gul'dan, Shadow Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan. And see the Portal timer? We're going to keep doing that until the timer runs out. Hand of Gul'dan, Soul Strike, Hand of Gul'dan, and we'll do that, Hand of Gul'dan. Okay, now it's out, we're going to summon the Tyrant, we're going to use our Demonic Strength, and then, yeah, look at all these demons, and we're going to just keep doing our normal rotation, get these Dreadstalkers out, and use our Demonic Cores. Look at our damage, it's going, but now it's going to start dropping off. As soon as this guy despawns, there he's gone. Now soon our demons will disappear. Soul Strike, let's sacrifice some demons, get some cores. And now all the cores proc, and then we can get our imps, and then it's basically the normal rotation from there. But as you can see, that was all pretty quick, and the damage didn't burst up as high as I'd like it to go for the amount of demons we had out. So that's why I'm like, yeah, I feel like the talent has potential, but I feel like it needs a buff. I feel like it needs more tweaking, more work to make it a bit interesting. Maybe if they made it an instant cast and cost no soul shards, I can see it being a better talent choice there. But that was basically my example of why I'd only use it if you really, really like it. Alright, now that that's cleared up, I'm going to show you what my serious talent build is. This is basically the build that I use by default. I use this in PvP as well, mainly in Battlegrounds. It works well in Arena, and great for movement fights. And the reason I'm going with Sacrifice Souls is because I like to have all those extra pets out so I can implode if I need to have that extra cleave. Demonic Consumption, I'd only go if you're really dead set on single target, but remember that we can't be 100% single target anyway because our Hand of Gul'dan cleaves by default. There's no way we can stop that from cleaving, so just keep that in mind if you don't want to hit targets around it. You've got to make sure they're outside of that Hand of Gul'dan. Alright, so we've gone over the talents. This is the build that I'm using. I'm going to show you the rotation now. So as I said before, I usually start off with the Soul Strike, followed by the Dreadstalkers, and then I get some imps out after I've got about 2 packs out. I'll summon the Tyrant. If these expire, I'll wait till these back out, and then I'll use the Tyrant just because getting extra Dreadstalkers with the Tyrant does a lot of damage, and then you can have up to 4 out at once. Alright, so let's get to it. Soul Strike, and we're gonna Dreadstalker, build up some Shadow Bolts, get an impact out, Shadow Bolt a bit more, and now we're gonna summon the Tyrant just because I was quick enough. And now we're gonna use our Demonic Strength to get that really strong Fellstorm. And I'm going to use my Power Siphon to get some extra Soul Shards, Soul Strike off cooldown, and then Shadow Bolt up to 3 or 4 shards. And then as you can see, the cores will start proccing. I'm going to implode all the imps, use that, and now I'm going to Hand of Gul'dan twice in a row just to get more imps out. That's because the Soul Conduit allows me to do that, if the RNG favours you. And now we're going to Soul Strike, get our Dreadstalkers back out off cooldown, summon more of these, summon our Tyrants again because these are already off cooldown, summon more of these, we're gonna Soul Strike, we're gonna Siphon, we're gonna get more imps out because I want to see how many imps we can get out before he expires, and then right as he expires we just implode the imps, And sometimes the imps will give you a lot of procs, and sometimes you don't get any at all. Alright, so this is ready to go, but we're going to save it for our Tyrant. Soul Strike, and a cooldown, get more of those. Oh look, the procs are coming in nicely now. And we're just going to keep spending those soul shards. Alright, we're going to get our Dreadies out, and then we're going to summon the Tyrant, and then we're going to do that Demonic Strength Fellstorm. We're going to get some more procs from our Siphon. We're going to Soul Strike straight after that cast. And then, yeah, basically it's just like a rinse and a repeat, and the rotation just flows real nice. And sometimes you don't even have to cast Shadow Bolt. Sometimes you'll get proc after proc after proc, and it will just work so nicely for you. But every now and then you'll just have to simply cast Shadow Bolt, but that's why I bind my Legion Strike to it. That way I'm getting a bit more benefit out of just pure Shadow Bolt. I'm getting more DPS from my Demon as well. So see, my Siphon Life's off cooldown right now, it's ready to go, but because I'm getting Demonic Core procs, I haven't needed to use it yet. So I won't use it until I'm out of shards and I need procs. So we can get our Tyrant out, I wasn't paying attention there. And now we can get some procs out. Soul Strike, get more rims. Soul Strike, use our Demonic Strength because our Tyrant's up. And then we're going to Implode, follow it up by Dreadstalkers. We're going to spend our Demon Bolts, Soul Strike, and a cooldown. Demon Bolt again, and a cooldown. Do you guys getting the idea yet? Because I certainly am. And yeah, it's a very fun rotation, guys. On trash, it's trash mobs in dungeons and raids. It's where it's the most fun because your cleave just hits so hard, especially once you get dot for your Hand of Gul'dan on that Azerite trait. Anyways, guys, that's a rotation that I use, and now I'm gonna go into the PvP part of the guide now. Just wanted to say one more thing about the PvE. You can use Summon Vile Fiend as well. It actually does more damage than Soul Strike. If you're not good at using Soul Strike off cooldown, Summon Vile Fiend's a better talent to go. You still need to summon this off cooldown, but it's 45 seconds, so you don't have to watch it anywhere near as frequently as you do with Soul Strike. Doesn't give you a shard though, it costs a shard. But does do a lot of damage, and some would argue on single target it will do more than the Soul Strike, which is good. So feel free to use that talent if it suits you. With that all said, time for PvP. If you're just here for PvP, I'll put that timestamp in for you, so if you've missed that, that's funny. Alright, so first into the talents. Netherward's good. It's a spell reflect. We've got Core Fel Hunter. It gives you your interrupt. Core Fel Lord takes 5% of the health away and stuns them for a second, and it doesn't DR with your other stuns, which is great. Core Observer, not many people use it because he sort of spawns right on top of you, but I can see it being viable if you play around with it enough and get used to it. Master Summoner is my favorite. So the other talent I'd like to use is the Curses. Curse of Agility is good, health reduced by 15% for 10 seconds with a 45-second cooldown. Great if you're bursting them down. That 15% less health can make a huge difference between a kill or them surviving it and then your burst being wasted. So the talents I'm going to go with now, I like to go with Netherward, and I like Core Fel Hunter for my spell lock, and I choose Pleasure Through Pain if I'd like to make my Shadow Bolt do more damage and use Shadow Bolt well, or if I'm running an Implosion build and I just want more imps out quickly, and I'm happy to use the Succubus. Pleasure Through Pain is good talent, but if you want to use your Felgun PvP to take advantage of his stun and everything, yeah, obviously don't use this talent. You're better off using Master Summoner or something, make your Dreadstalkers instant cast. So for talents, I'm using pretty much what you saw before. They're the talents I like to use. You can change this around in BGs. Dreadlasher is probably a bit better just because it's more consistent. You can use it straight off cooldown. Same with Demonic Calling if you're on the move a lot from the shadows, whatnot, but I prefer Soul Strike. Alright, so another thing about PvP is the Grimoire Felguard. So this is really good in arena and duel environments, even in battleground environments as well if you'd like. So if we choose this now we've got this to come out on cooldown. So though he's been nerfed a lot, that stun can still make a huge difference for that extra bit of CC you got, and he actually does a lot of burst damage. So I'm going to show you the rotation now of what an opener would be. So remember we've got our stun here. So say your opener would be Red Stalkers, and we've got our Grimoire. We're going to summon our Tyrant straight away. We're going to Demonic Strength. We're going to thing, and look at our burst, man. We're almost at 6k DPS. I've actually hit that. And then we're just going to do our normal rotation. And we're going to use our stun and our Mortal Coil to keep them CC'd. And then we're going to fear off that Mortal Coil, and then we're going to Hand of Gul'dan, and if the fear breaks, we're just going to fear again. We're going to use our instant cast Red Stalkers, we're going to Soul Strike, we're going to Hand of Gul'dan, we're going to Demonic Core, we're going to Hand of Gul'dan, we're going to Demonic Core again, we're going to Hand of Gul'dan, we're going to Demonic Core again. And then we've got Hand of Gul'dan again, and then yeah, you just end up so much imps, and you got to somehow fit your CC in this to take full advantage of it. So your fear does last a little bit of damage, guys. It doesn't break on the first bit of damage you get. Sometimes it will last ages, and you can fit in a drain life here and there if you're getting low on health. And then yeah, remember to use that Demonic Tyrant or cooldown. Obviously legendaries won't work in PvP, so you don't have to worry about it like coming off cooldown really as quick as what it just did there, but it's best used with your Grimoire of Felguard, guys. So that's basically the burst opener build with the Grimoire of Felguard. If you don't want the burst, you can still use Inner Demons, and the reason why Inner Demons would be better than Soul Conduit in PvP is because if you're using Power Siphon, then you're always going to have at least 1 to 2 imps out. So if you want a Power Siphon right at the start of the fight so you can start instant casting your Demonic Cores, you already have 2 imps out, so you can Power Siphon straight away. And say you've got a enemy mage here, right, and you know he's going to spell lock you as soon as you start hard casting. So instead, you hit Power Siphon and it'll sacrifice your 2 imps around you here, and you can start instant casting straight away. Instant Dreadstalkers, cast again, use your Demonic Strength. So we've already used several spells, and then we can stun him, hard cast, fear him, hard cast, and then we can use our instant cast, Mortar Coil him, hard cast, and followed by a fear, and then we can do our instant cast again. And basically, yeah, you just try and keep him CC'd as much as you can, and by the time he locks you, if he does lock you, some of them don't lock you at all, yeah, by the time he's locked you, you've already got all your pets out. So when you're locked, it's not a big deal for you so much because your pets are still out smacking the crap out of him, and he'll be dead by the time your lock comes off cooldown. So easy as that. The trick is with Demo and PvPs, you got to take advantage of that CC. If you do not CC your target, then you become a very easy target to kill for them. You may have seen a lot of bad negative things about Demo locks in PvP, and that's just because they're a bit harder to play now, and that's purely because if you don't CC and you get locked down, you're not going to do much at all. But as soon as you got your army of demons out, yeah, you're basically an unstoppable god. Alright guys, we're almost at the end of the guide now. There's a couple of other little things that I want to show you that can differentiate the Warlock from a Master Warlock, and that's knowing how to use your pets effectively. This stuff can get advanced, but I'll try and keep it simple as I can for you guys so it becomes easy for you. So first things first, with the Felguard for example, your Fellstorm, you want that to be on passive if you want this to go off cooldown as soon as it's off cooldown, and that's the easiest way to have it maximized off passive. If you don't want it on passive because you want to only use it when there's AoE, area of effect, abilities required in a group of mobs or a group of players for example, bind this to a key and then you can use it on demand. And just remember, you can't have this Fellstorm and this Demonic Strength going on at the same time. If one's happening, you got to wait for it to finish before you can use the other one, so just be aware of that. The other thing is the Axe Toss ability. So if you go into your spellbook and your command demon, which is here, it says Axe Toss, right? Now if you press this ability and sometimes it goes on cooldown for whatever reason, but the axe doesn't actually come out. It will be on cooldown here, but on the bar itself, it won't be on cooldown. I'm pretty sure they patched this, but every now and then it still happens to me. So what I've done, I've made a little macro here, and it's literally /cast axe toss special ability. So you just go into the macro, you go on your spell, click pet, and let's say I'm just making it from scratch here. You just shift click like that and auto fills it, hit save, drag it down on your action bar, and this will always work. It'll always be in perfect sync with the actual axe toss, because it's not the command demon ability, it's axe toss, it's the ability itself, it's not a diversion. So that's another important thing to remember. One last thing I want to show you about is when I was going into about the macro with the Shadow Bolt and the pet, like Legion Strike, you can do this with other pets as well. So for the Fell Hunter, for example, let's just summon him out just so you guys can see. His main attack is called Shadow Bite. So Shadow Bite, you could put this in the macro as well. But what I would not do what this is. People do this, right? They've got Legion Strike and Shadow Bite in the same macro. Now, you don't want to do this. I'll tell you why. Because if I've got my Fell Hunter out and my macro is doing Legion Strike, it's not actually going to activate the Shadow Bite because it shares the same global cooldown. And vice versa. If I've got Shadow Bite and I've got the Fell Guard out, you're going to have the same problem. So let me just demonstrate why that's a problem. So let's just take that back out because I don't want that. Alright, I've actually got Shadow Bite on my action bar, right? No Fell Hunter. Now let's see what happens when I press it. It puts Legion Strike on global cooldown. Do you see that? Legion Strike. So if my macro is saying Shadow Strike and Legion Strike at the same time, whichever's first in the command line is what's going to happen. So if Shadow Bite's before Legion Strike with my Fell Hunter, it's going to pretend to do a Shadow Bite, but Shadow Bite won't actually happen, and therefore Legion Strike will go on cooldown, and then you're not going to make a nick of difference out of that. And also it's going to prevent the auto cast from happening. So just be very aware of that. If you're going to make a macro and you want it to auto-cast your main pet's ability, just make sure you change it to the pet you're actually using each time and delete the pet you're not using, because otherwise you're going to have this global cooldown problem. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. That's all the guide for today. I'm going to make more advanced guides later on, and once we're at 120 I'll make a completely new guide. I'll make 3 different ones. I'll make a beginner's guide for Demo, an advanced guide for Demo, and a PvP guide for Demo. But today I thought, because it's pre-patch, I'll just put it all in the one guide. So apologies for the long video. I've got timestamps in if you need to refer back to this.